series of 1987. And it is rookie quarterback Chris Chandler who is helping the offense hit a healthy stride.
Traffic gets to the right. He's got it open. He's at the 30. He's at the 25, 20, 15, 10, 5. Touchdown, Chris Chandler. He rolls to the right.
Chandler's elusiveness was nothing new, as for the fourth straight game, he avoided being sacked.
Chandler back to throw. Sets up, throws one deep, intended for Verdant. Clearance is there. Touchdown, Verdant.
The Colts probably would have worked up more of a sweat Sunday afternoon doing aerobics, as like the Vikings, Falcons, and Bengals, they got a victory the easy way, by a blowout. The Colts, winners of 4 straight, look to continue their belated charge for the playoffs this Sunday against a Packer team that has lost 3 straight, including back-to-back shutouts by Buffalo and Atlanta.
Folks, the Colts have really turned things around in the last 5 weeks. When you take a look at this statistical board behind me, the second line, points scored, I think that is the important one. In the first 5 ball games, the Colts were averaging just 15 points a game, but in the last 5 weeks, they're averaging over 33 points a game. That is why they are on a roll. A man who is on a roll, folks, every time he shows up on Inside the NFL is our correspondent, Gordon Forbes. And, Gordon, there are rumors about Joe Montana floating around about the possibility of a trade. What do you hear about that?
Well, and Joe Montana himself feels he's going to be traded in the offseason. But I talked to 3 general managers, and they told me that Montana's value is not nearly as high as a lot of teams would think. And they say that the only teams interested in Montana would be an older team that perhaps thinks it has a shot at going to the Super Bowl next year. But really, these rumors, which are unfounded, because Eddie DiBartolo, the owner, told me that Montana's not going anywhere. He's going to stay in San Francisco and quarterback the 49ers.
Gordon, I understand that you have some information about a man that we visited with just a couple of weeks ago, the head coach of the Chicago Bears.
Well, Nick, I talked to one of Ditka's close friends, and he says that Ditka will coach as long as he thinks that this current team can win a Super Bowl. And he's also interested in new challenges. So if a few years goes by and this team doesn't win the Super Bowl, this friend told me that Ditka will get into a new field, possibly as a television sportscaster, and get this, possibly as a player on the seniors golf tour. And he says that Ditka plays golf the same way he coaches. And that could scare a lot of these senior players off the course.
I'll tell you one thing, Gordon. One thing I don't want to be is Mike Ditka's caddy if he goes on the senior tour.
Well, speaking of coaches, Len, you were mentioning Detroit's Darryl Rogers earlier in the show. I understand now that if the Lions are beaten by the Tampa Bay Bucks this week, that owner Bill Ford could fire Rogers with 5 games left. Now, Ford is a patient owner. He usually lets his coach ride out the storm, so to speak. But the Lions have played so poorly this year that Ford may decide to act right now and get rid of Rogers and bring in an interim coach.
Well, let's talk about something that's very serious now, something that's important, like what the leading sacker in the American Football Conference is doing these days. I'm talking about Mark Gastineau. He up and retired, but a lot of people ask me, what is he up to? What information do you have about him?
Well, I talked to Gastineau's mother this week, and she said that Mark, her son, he's out fishing, relaxing, taking it easy. But he's about to embark on a Hollywood acting career, joining his fiancée, Brigitte Nielsen, who is also an actress.
Well, I don't know how much of a calling they have for people doing a sack dance in Hollywood, because he did that very well.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. I think he could probably go back and do the Tarzan movies. Tarzan in the 8 starting Mark Gastineau. Who knows? There could be a rebirth. Gordon, thanks a lot for being on the show. And keep coming back with that info. We can really use it.
Okay, Nick. We'll see you next week.
Now, earlier in the show, we were talking about a man who was very, very versatile. His name's Jim Jensen. Well, in my early days with the Boston Patriots, there was a guy who could do it all for us. His nickname was the Duke. In our Where Are They Now segment, you're going to see an awfully busy Gino Cappelletti.
It's 6:11 with Jess Kane with Tom Doyle. I'm Gino Cappelletti, WHDH Sports.
The name Gino Cappelletti is still in the sports news every day in Boston, but now he's giving news, not making it. From 1960 through 1970, Gino was one of the symbols of the old AFL. The player short on height and perhaps talent, but long on determination and guts. Several times, Cappy got positions by making himself be at the right place at the right time. He called the Patriots for a job and got it. He told the Patriots he could catch passes. He showed them.
One practice that we had, we were kind of short on receivers. So having played halfback and having played defensive back, I just jumped into the huddle while the receiver was coming back from running a long pass pattern in practice, and the quarterback just saw the huddle was filled, so he called the play. I knew the play by standing behind the huddle. I went and ran the pattern. He threw the ball to me, not knowing it was me. I caught the pass, made a little move, and I worked my way upfield. So that's how I became a receiver and combination kicker.
It was said that Gino had deceptive speed for a receiver. He was actually slower than he looked.
Well, thank you, and good morning, everyone.
And when those feet lost yet another step, Gino retired. But today he's still a double-duty player. His first job is mornings at WHDH Radio in Boston, where he announces Patriot games and does the morning sports reports.
As they lost. And I'll go to the wire and get the sports results, sports stories, sit down, decide exactly what stories I'm going to use for the morning. And then at 5:45 is our first sportscast for being on the air, and it'll go until 8:45 in the morning.
That's just in time to go to his other job with a national paper distributor.
After my radio show, then I'll get in my car and I'll start calling on my accounts and paying them visits and seeing that everything is all right, seeing if we can get some orders, and also representing the company out on the field. My job then is to bring in sales. And what I will do is when I come here is to make sure that my customers are receiving their orders on time as much as possible. So I'll kind of check around the warehouse, see some of my stock that is here along with the other salesmen. But there's always that physical checkup that you want to make. And that's what happens when you see me around here in the warehouse.
The 54-year-old Cappelletti may oversee plenty of projects, but he knows much of it is because his fans still see him as the underdog overachiever. In a league full of Allworth, Blandas, and Maynards, there always seem to be rumors of the less talented Cappelletti's demise. But coaches and players knew better. And when Gino called it quits, he had played in every game the Patriots had in the AFL and was forever that league's all-time leading scorer.
The most exciting time in my life was playing professional football and with the Patriots and in the American Football League. Nothing will ever come close to that. It just was a great time in my life.
Gino, the Duke Cappelletti, boy, you talk about a class act, he's the one. Since Gino's retired from football, he has done more charitable work in the city of Boston than anybody I know. Matter of fact, Lenny, he's known as Mr. Boston.
You know, we had Pirelli, Bonacani, and Cappelletti, at least the Italian section. And I'll tell you something, he was not known as a burner, was he? They used a sundial rather than a stopwatch to time him. It's a good thing they didn't just judge him on speed. They judged him on the size of this man's heart. And look at all the things that he's accomplished.
Tell you one thing about Gino. He was a very, and is a very considerate man. Well, I'd like to change the subject just a minute and talk a little bit about something that happened early in the year. You remember David Crudup, the defensive back from the Atlanta Falcons, died from an overdose of cocaine. And I don't think the last chapter on David Crudup has been written. As a matter of fact, that had a lasting effect on his Atlanta Falcon teammates.
Well, you are absolutely right. That had to be very devastating. As a matter of fact, one of his teammates is on our NFL forum this week. Mike Kent is an offensive lineman for the Atlanta Falcons, and he talks about